Welcome to 2016 Presidential Candidate Interviews. Today I'm interviewing J.R. Myers. Mr. Myers is running in the Constitution Party and the American Independent Party of California. Hello, Mr. Myers, and welcome to the interview. How are you doing today?
Good morning. I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. I'd like to thank you for participating. We'll get into some icebreaker questions and then some issues-based questions.
All right.
Describe your family or your home life.
Well, I'm originally from Montana. I'm a fifth-generation Montanan, but I moved to Alaska in 2003, where I reside currently in my cabin outside of Soldotna, and I'm a single person, so it's just me.
Okay. Can you describe your employment, your work experience, your work history?
Sure. I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor in the state of Alaska, and I'm also on the executive committee of the Alaska Counseling Association. I'm currently a behavioral health consultant at the Kenaitze tribe in Kenai, Alaska, where I work in the Denina Wellness Center with the medical team and the behavioral health department to serve the UNINA or the clients in our area.
Great. What are your hobbies and your interests?
Well, I have a greenhouse, and I like to work on my cabin. That keeps me busy. There's always something to work on in my cabin in the woods. I'm interested, of course, in civic affairs. I've been involved in different things such as domestic violence and sexual assault initiatives, and just different types of taxation issues, zoning issues, just local government, state government, federal government, just civic involvement is my primary interest.
Do you have any favorite restaurants you like to eat out at?
Well, I won't give you names, but I'll give you types of food. How's that?
That's good.
Well, I've been long said that the town's not worth living in if it doesn't have a Chinese buffet. So it's a Chinese buffet is one of my favorites, and also Mexican. So good taco, good enchilada, you can't beat that.
Okay. Do you have a favorite fast food joint?
A favorite fast food joint?
Yeah.
Well, right now I'd say it's probably Subway.
Okay. Do you have a favorite kind of junk food, something you wouldn't let anybody watch you eat at 2 a.m. in the dark of the night?
Well, I used to make some really amazing plates of nachos.
Okay. Any favorite TV shows and movies?
I don't watch TV anymore on a regular basis. I just think it's too much of a mind drain. So I just get most of my information and entertainment off the internet now. As far as movies, I kind of like the dystopian visions of the future. One of my early favorites was Logan's Run. I like The Island, iRobot, that kind of thing. And then on the other hand, I like It's a Wonderful Life, that sort of thing that shows the importance of the difference one life can make. So,
do you have any pets, dogs, cats, reptiles, anything?
I have 2 cats. They're currently staying in Montana right now, but that's Spunky and Sassy. I call them my Alaska cats because they're Alaskan cats and they're really large and voracious hunters. But other than that, I have my resident moose and mama moose and calf, and I have some brownies. At least one big brownie hanging around, one big brown bear hanging around my property here recently. So I get to see the wildlife wander through.
Okay. And the final icebreaker question. Can you name a song that you consider your life anthem, a motto, something that represents who you are?
Wow, a song, huh? Let's see. Well, I know some have already said this, but I'll go with America the Beautiful because that kind of encapsulates really what this is all about. And I do, that I learned that song as a child, and there's a lot of meaning there. And I think America is beautiful and has a great destiny. Anyway.
And now on to the issues-based questions. Number one,
Okay.
why are you running for president?
Well, I was looking out there, and I had just run for governor in 2014, and so I didn't think I'd be, engaging in any campaign so soon. But I'm looking out there, and there's just a dearth of candidates that really espouse what I believe. And then I received a call from someone in California asking me if I would be interested in keeping the American Independent Party nomination in California. And so I prayed about it and thought about it, and I decided, why not, again, it goes to my core beliefs of civic involvement, and I am constitutionally qualified for the office of president. I am interested in civic affairs, so why not? The office was originally intended for citizens to serve and then go back to their lives, and we should return more to our foundational principles.
Okay. What abilities would you bring to the office of president?
What abilities?
Correct.
I am intelligent, funny, creative. I like to surround myself with people who can help me, where I can delegate authority to them or get advice. There's wisdom in a multitude of counselors, so I like to seek out people who know about different topics if I don't know about them. And I think I can provide inspiration for a common vision. And I think I'm somewhat unorthodox. I think outside the box, and I think that these times call us to think outside the box. I think our traditional political systems have failed us, and we really need to chart a new course, or we're in serious trouble.
Are there any presidents that you have a favorable opinion of that have aspects of their presidency you would want to emulate?
Well, I think our first president, George Washington, has to be one of the most admirable of all. He had to really search within himself as to what it meant to be involved, first of all, in the Revolution, but then in the formation of a government and his position within that government. And he had the opportunity to become king, and he turned that down. So much of what the modern presidency is, or the presidency in much of the development of the presidency, is due to Washington's circumspection and his refusal to become king. And I think we need somebody who understands what the presidency is about, that it is not an imperial position or a royal position, but it is a servant leadership position.
Are there any presidents you have an unfavorable opinion of who have aspects of their presidency that you would not want to emulate?
Well, again, I think we've seen, an imperial presidency developing, and we see a lot of these executive orders, government run by executive orders, and this has been increasing, really since the Bush presidencies, and so it's culminated now with our current president, who I think is really the most egregious of all as far as usurpations of the executive office. And so I would, if I were in office, I would go about rescinding many executive orders because I think they're totally unconstitutional and illegal.
Are there any functions of government you would like to decrease or even abolish?
Well, certainly I think the federal Department of Education is another, you could say, usurpation. It's an improper federal overreach. Education should be a local and state function. So I think that's a big area of concern. I think the EPA, although we do need to be good stewards of the environment, the federal EPA has repeatedly shown itself to not be up to the task. And again, it's not necessarily the proper jurisdiction of the federal government. It should be turned back to the states.
Okay. I don't know if I need to ask a Constitution Party candidate this, but since I ask everybody, I'll ask you too.
Sure.
Are there any functions of government you'd like to add to or increase? Are there any offices or branches that don't exist that should exist?
No. And in fact, we have too large of a government, and so we do need to downsize the government at all levels, federal, state, local. Alaska is a good example. A government that had many, many billions of dollars is now finding itself headed into fiscal hard times because the socialist policies, while they were maintainable with large oil revenues, they're no longer sustainable. And so the state, instead of really seriously looking at downsizing the state government, they're talking about how they can confiscate more of the citizens' wealth. So we don't need to be increasing the size of government. We need to be getting government out of the way of the people so that the economy and individual initiative and community cooperation, private cooperation, nonprofit cooperation can fill the needs that the government has been increasingly taking over with negative effect.
Describe your stance on taxation.
Well, I believe that the more taxation, of course, it's a burden on the economy. So I believe that the less taxes we can have, the better off we'll be financially as an economy, because taxation is, after all, the confiscation of wealth, and it removes wealth. Taxation removes wealth from the private sector and puts it into the wasteful, abusive, and fraudulent government.
Describe your stance on the abortion pro-choice issue.
Well, of course, I am, as a Constitution Party candidate, fully pro-life, but the issue is not just about abortion. It extends all the way from conception to natural death. And, we're talking about physician-assisted suicide. We're talking about, wars, unauthorized wars. We're talking about, unauthorized drone strikes, killing our citizens without due process. So, in general, government has been given the power of life and death, and we must be very careful how the government is able to implement those powers over the life and death of people. And so I definitely come down on the side of life.
What role should our military play in the world?
Well, really one of the few legitimate functions of government is to protect the borders of the nation and the people. And so our government should be a defensive force, not an offensive imperial force. So we really, need to question why we have military bases in, over 140 countries in the world or something like that. And we have to look at history and look at what happened with Rome. And the same parallels are unfortunately happening to the United States and our allies. And, we have bankrupted ourselves through foreign adventurism, and now we are being overrun by, people from all over the world. Look at Europe right now. They're not able to defend their borders, and the turmoil and warfare that they participated in other regions is now coming home to roost, and it's also, in America as well. Our borders are absolutely undefended, and so that's the legitimate function of our military, to defend our borders.
How would you handle immigration and border security?
Well, I firmly believe in legal immigration. I'm totally opposed to illegal immigration. That being said, I think we do have an obligation to provide asylum to legitimate asylum seekers, and so I would not be in favor of sending people away from the United States back to their torture or death. However, we cannot absorb untold multitudes that just decide they want to live here, that don't have a true, it's not a true life or death situation. We really need to be creating policies that will protect our national borders and encourage those people to develop their own nations. And we have to eliminate things like the anchor babies. We have to initiate some tougher security at the border, maybe drones, that type of thing, electronic, digital fence. Part of it might be a real fence, but Again, if people have a legitimate need for asylum, let's welcome them. Immigrants have built this nation, but let's follow the rule of law and not abandon our core principles and commit suicide in the process of trying to show empathy and kindness to the world.
How do you perceive the issues of race and discrimination in America? Do we still face challenges? And maybe a little something specific to you, since you have experience in it. Can you maybe give some, once you're done answering that question, could you maybe put your experience with the Native American into that? It would just be an interesting perspective.
Well, unfortunately, race is an issue in this nation, and we've seen both sides, hyperbole on both sides recently, which is so unfortunate. I think America does derive much of its strength from our diversity, but the seeds of our destruction also lie therein if we are not careful. And I see the policies of our current government further dividing us along racial and ethnic lines, which is contrary to the promises that the people expected prior to the election of this administration twice. A lot of people were hopeful that they would bring more unity, but we are seeing instead a much greater racial divide. My personal experience, being part Native American and as a founder of the Great Falls NAACP, I've long had an interest in these matters, and I believe that all Americans need to be treated equally under the law. That being said, we do have treaty obligations that are real to the various tribes. There are government-to-government relations which must be respected. That being said, we have a long history of the federal government, violating the treaty rights and engaging in, let's just say, call it what it is, genocide. And, that has been an unfortunate history in our country, and we cannot, gloss that over or ignore it. Does that have to hold us hostage to the negativity of the past? No. But it has to, we must be informed based upon a realistic assessment of our history. So, race relations, what is the answer? I think the answer actually comes through faith. I think that if we realize we're all children of the same God and we're all descended from the same ancestors, which I believe, we realize that we are brothers and sisters, and that's the true answer, that, we have to have God in our hearts to help us to overcome our personal faults where, it's so easy to hate one another, and that's not what we were created to do. So, I guess that would be my answer.
All right. What role should the federal government play in healthcare?
None.
Okay. Next question then?
Yep.
Okay. What priority would you give repair of infrastructure? What role should the federal government have in maintaining infrastructure?
Well, obviously, the interstate highway system has been a boon to the nation. So, that sometimes it does, there are massive government projects that are of benefit that it's hard to imagine them being accomplished otherwise. But as far as controlling, the Constitution limits the legitimate authority of the federal government in trade. So tariffs are one of the legitimate powers the federal government should have. As far as infrastructure development, really, I'm in favor of decentralization and turning things back to the states and localities as much as possible, realizing that there are, some infrastructure projects with the interstate system. There's a partnership and has been beneficial, but we have to realize that every time we engage in such construction projects, it is a compromise, and we do give up. We give something up in exchange for what we get, let's put it that way. So we need to be very careful in the types of projects, like the high-speed rail, for instance. I don't know that that's really a legitimate enterprise that we should be undertaking, and it looks like it could end up bankrupting California So it's hard to say. I know that our infrastructure is decaying, and it would be a great jobs program just to, refurbish our existing infrastructure. But again, where's the money going to come from? I can't, we have no money, no real money left. So, get that real money to do things.
Okay. Where do you stand on maintaining personal privacy, personal liberties, and the need to protect our nation from terrorism? Some people think there is a conflict of interest between both.
Well, again, our rights were not granted by government. They're supposed to be enforced by government. So our right to privacy does not come from the government. So the government really has no legitimate business trying to usurp or diminish that right. I am opposed to the creation of a police state in the name of peace and security, because in the end we will end up, as Franklin, I believe, said, with neither. So, it's a little disconcerting to me that we're having cameras popping up everywhere, recording everybody as if, everything's being turned on its head. So we are all now considered potential enemies of the state, I guess you could say, rather than having the benefit of innocence under the law. We're all categorically presumed guilty, or at least suspect of something, it seems. And I find that to be really reprehensible.
Kind of a sensitive question, but it matters to a good amount of voters. What role does faith, religion, spirituality, etc., whatever you want to throw under that heading, what role does it play in your life? And what type of role would it play for you as president?
Well, I am a believer. I believe in the Bible and in Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ, and I believe that this nation was founded upon biblical principles, Judeo-Christian principles. I think it's important to keep that in mind. As I had referenced earlier, that is where our rights truly originate, is from our divine creator, as far as I'm concerned, and governments are instituted solely to protect those rights. So the people are, in my estimation, under God, and the government should be under the people. So that should be the proper order of things. And while if I were president, I would adhere to the constitutional framework and the rule of law, which is also biblical, that we have to follow those laws, the laws of the land, which are, as long as they're not in conflict with our beliefs, which I don't see where the Constitution conflicts with the Bible at all.
Okay.
But I think is an expression of biblical principles. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay. Be a forecaster of sorts. Predict maybe one or two major problems facing our country in the future that few people or maybe no one is talking about. What would you do to prepare America for these?
Well, I'm very concerned about our Arctic policy, and now people, recently have been talking about it with the Chinese warships and the Russian military expansion in the Arctic, but I've been talking about it for the last couple of years, and there have been very few until recently who have even been willing to address that. We are far behind in the Arctic, and we basically, by default, we're allowing Russians and now their, Chinese allies, basically, to get a firm foothold that will be very difficult to challenge in the future.
Okay. Everybody has strengths. Go ahead.
Well, and then, I am also concerned about the situation with the Christians in the Middle East, particularly in Syria. And now, again, people are starting to talk about that, but I'm calling for the immediate facilitation of asylum for all Christians who are fleeing their homelands, who are being hunted down and tortured and killed. And we cannot, talk about immigration. These are the types of people that we I believe we're created to welcome into our country those who are fleeing for their lives because of their beliefs.
Okay. Getting down to the last few questions here. Everybody has strengths and everybody has weaknesses. What are some of your weaknesses, some of the areas you're maybe not so good at? What are they, and what would you do to compensate or make up for these?
Well, I'm not a billionaire. I don't have a private jet or private helicopter. And I'm not going to be taking probably any corporate donations. So finances, I'd say, on the financial scale, I'd probably be considered, on the lower end of the candidates, if that could be considered a weakness. But in the same token, I consider it a strength because I'm not beholding, and I do know how most Americans live, and the daily realities we face. My strength, the greatest strength, I think, is my faith in God and my belief that He has created every human being with a purpose, and that His will be accomplished, and that He is in charge of the affairs of America and the world, even though it may be difficult to perceive at times. But I think that is a great liberating knowledge and my greatest strength. My greatest weakness is, human nature, which we all face, which is that temptation to act out of our own strength, out of our own limitations, not to recognize our limitations, but to try to do things under our own power. I think that's my greatest limitation and weakness. But again, I think it's common to many.
Are there any other issues you would like to discuss that haven't been covered yet?
Yes, and getting back to why I got in this race, a lot of it has to do with the electoral votes and the debates and giving people a choice. And, I think it's very important that every candidate who meets the constitutional requirements for office and who will appear on the ballot in at least enough jurisdictions and enough states to gain at least a hypothetical threshold of 270 electoral votes, which would be a winning number, that every such candidate should be allowed to participate in the presidential debates. And that the presidential debates are something that it's a civic forum for the people, and they should not be manipulated or controlled by private interests that have been done for so long. That I'm calling on those debates to be opened up. I think we need to, at a minimum, we need to see, aside from the Democrats and Republicans, we need to see the Libertarian candidate, we need to see the Green Party candidate, and we need to see the Constitution Party nominee up there on stage debating, if not more. But those are the 5 parties that are FEC, Federal Election Commission, recognized parties. So those parties and the nominees of those parties should be fully participating in the presidential debates.
Okay. Closing remarks. In 2 minutes or less, tell us why we should vote for you.
Well, I'm just a human being, just an average person. Again, I'm not beholden to any particular special interest groups. I'm just stepping out because I feel called to be involved civically. I think that's the responsibility of every American. Did I think I was going to run for president? No. But I am. And, we'll see where it leads. My first task is to secure the nomination of the American Independent Party in California and the Constitution Party nationwide. And that is the first task before me. And so I am building my campaign in preparation for projecting more of my views and thoughts nationwide. So, and this interview is part of that effort as well. So I appreciate the opportunity to share my views and to get better known. Thank you, Lee.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Myers, for participating in the interview. Thank you to my listeners for listening. Be sure to check back again for more interviews. Have a good day, and remember to keep informed and to keep involved. Thanks again, Mr. Myers.
All right. Thank you, and God bless America.